Perfect. Good evening, everyone. So welcome back to Growing Together session number 9, I think, because we did 8 before last school year. So it's a new start. We're starting all over again, and also we're finishing since we have 4 workshops left, and we're really happy to be back together. I think I kind of missed those moments. I'm really honored to be here tonight with all of you. And tonight we will be talking about anxiety with Eva, Sarah, and Lynn. So I think I will pass on who wants to talk first, maybe.
Well, we usually introduce ourselves just in case there's somebody who has not attended the other sessions and don't know who we are.
So, for everyone, I'm Valérie Fortin, working at FNEC. I'm a SPEC counselor, and I'm working with Sarah also, and Eva, building those workshops that hopefully make sense to you and allows you to understand better your children.
Sarah?
Great, everyone. It's so nice to see people that we don't see for a while, and welcome to the new person attending this workshop. I'm Sarah Cleary. I also work at the FNEC. I'm a student success counselor in language and culture, and I bring the First Nation perspective so we can bring back our knowledge, our know-how into our schools. So these days.
Lynn.
Okay, Sego, everybody. Most people on here know who I am, but I think there's a few new ones. So my name is Lynn Jacob Scott, and I work in Ganawage at an elementary school, which is Cattery School. And I'm a student support teacher working in a room called the Scunnagoa room, which means big peace. So it's been busy. The kids are waking up now that they're back in school, and we have the majority of our students in the school now. So it's been a busy 2 days, just, connecting with them. And that's what I do. If there's an issue in the schoolyard or in the classroom, it's just bringing the students, listening to, what it is that is challenging them. And it's just a matter of connecting them back, rooting them back, and, guiding them through some solutions and choices so that, they can start their own peacemaking skills. And that's what we want. We want them to be more autonomous in their solving their own problems in a more peaceful and compassionate and caring way. So that's the work that I do there. I've also been invited to be here for the, I guess, just some cultural and input. I can't add too much on the language because I'm not a fluent speaker, but wherever I can help, I've been in the school system now for 31 years. And so with all the different experiences that I've had, I'll share what I can. And all we can do is work together, support each other to move forward to meet the needs of our children. So.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, so I'm Eva D'Agostini. I'm a school psychologist, and I've been working in the field for many, many years, 45 years or more. And it's my pleasure to share with you some theoretical knowledge that I've gained over the years that ties in also with my own experience. I count on Sarah and on Lynn to bring the cultural component to this material, and encourage you, especially because we're going to be focusing on the little ones, the 4 to 8-year-olds, to apply it in a way that makes sense to you in terms of your community, in terms of your culture, in terms of your way of being with children. What I hope that I'm able to bring to you through these presentations is a reassurance that the neuroscience, that our understanding of trauma, that our understanding of child development are actually very, very, very much coherent with the way in which your communities raised their children before there was any contact. You knew what you had to do for your children, you knew how to do it, and you did it. And now you're rediscovering that, sadly, because of the events that happened, and reapplying it. And I'm hoping that the theory will then allow you to feel very, very confident in what you do and how you do it. But some of the things that I say are going to require you to rethink, the ways in which you interact with children. Again, for those of you that have not attended the other sessions, we encourage you. It's all on the FNEC YouTube channel. Go and listen to the other 8 sessions. See how we unpack and unfold the development of children, what we're wired to do, how as human beings we have everything in us to grow and develop into the most wonderful people. And again, I'm very, very honored to be invited to do this. And in all humility, I hope that what I present today and share today will be helpful to you in raising your children to be the wonderful people that they can be. So what we're going to look at today is the whole issue of anxiety and alarm. And actually, it wasn't the first one that we were going to had planned, but we realized, oh yes, of course, after being out of school for nearly a year and a half, with all of what is going on in our society with COVID, with so many things, that we thought, no, maybe we need to really start with looking at anxiety, alarm, and attention problems that come with it, because again, I know that many of the children were very excited to come back to school. They were just so thrilled to be with their teachers, to be with the people that cared for them. They are very, very happy for all the wonderful resources you have at your school. They're dying to be with other people in another setting with their friends, and they want to be as good as possible. But as Lynn said, they're starting to wake up and reality is coming in. And one of the things that we know is coming to the fore is this whole, the whole emotional baggage that is coming with living through a pandemic and with just some of the challenges that these children are facing in their homes. And so these are the questions that we are wanting to answer: is why are some of our children so anxious? Why do so many young children have a hard time staying still, paying attention, staying on task? Why don't they listen to adults? And why are some of them so agitated? And so we're going to look at this. It's a very, very quick review of a lot of information. And I am definitely going to get to some things that you can do in your classrooms. For those of you that have attended sessions with us before, you're going to go, oh, there she goes again. That's the list, but that's the list that makes a difference. And hopefully you'll hear something new that you haven't heard before today, and also confirm some of the things. Maybe you've tried out some of the suggestions that we've made, and getting a sense that over the long term, these suggestions do make a difference. So what we see, of course, are all sorts of behaviors: tearfulness, jitteriness, conscientious, obsessive, even maybe phobias, being afraid of certain things, a lot of anxiety around separation, difficulty with learning, fear of making mistakes, restlessness, trouble focusing, acting out, scattered attention, even sometimes panic attacks that are happening. And again, remembering that with the constant concern about getting sick with COVID, there are some real reasons why these things are happening. And so we're basically, this is what we see. These are the behaviors we see. But what do we not see? Well, what we don't see is what's underneath it, which is basically our alarm system. And these are the symptoms of an activated alarm system. And I think one of the things that living through a pandemic has done for us as adults is that we are often able to manage our world quite nicely, but COVID has shown us that there are things that we can't handle, things that we can't control. And so all of us are feeling an activated alarm system. And again, I go back into the brain and just remind us that the job of the limbic system, of the alarm system, which is part of the emotional brain, it's right, that deep part inside of our brain, its job is to ensure our survival. So it is going to pay attention to anything that can threaten our survival. And the parts of the brain that are most activated when that happens is the amygdala, which is a tiny little organ that basically just notes a threat. It's like our smoke detector. We have the hypothalamus that's right beside the amygdala, and basically the hypothalamus activates the response. When the amygdala says there's trouble, the hypothalamus communicates with our sympathetic nervous system and all of our hormones and whatever to get us to do something so that we stay alive. And our hippocampus remembers primarily what it is that threatens us, but of course it's also involved with memory. And when it's at rest, it can do the job that we want it to do in education, which is take the things that a child has learned during the course of a day and put them into the long-term memory so it becomes part of the brain's development. But we have to remember that for some children, and even for those of us right now when we're trying to deal with staying healthy and not getting COVID, our hippocampus is kind of busy trying to remember what it is that could threaten us. And when the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, we get cortisol, which again affects our blood sugar level, makes us more active, our adrenaline, our heart rate goes up, our breathing gets shallower. We have norepinephrine, which is responsible for vigilant concentration. And so it means that we're paying attention to things. Again, some of you as it's sort of helpful because through COVID, some of us realize that, oh, we pay attention to who's walking on the street. We're paying attention to whether we've cleaned our hands. So this is what the norepinephrine does. It helps us to pay attention to what our brain thinks is important for survival. And then we get growth hormone, which increases glucose. And then the blood vessels constrict, the heart rate goes up, the blood goes to the muscles. And that's going to be important because we see many of our children who are quite agitated and hyperactive. Well, this is all what's going on inside of them. And so this is meant to go up and down. It's meant to go up and down, and periods of rest and periods. And as we know, with the pandemic, many of us have felt that we've just been going on this constant state of alarm, and it's very exhausting. So the alarm system, basically, it's when survival is at stake. Arousal and attention are involved. In other words, we pay attention to what we think is going to be a threat to us. These emotions are activated, things start moving within us, our whole system starts moving to make sure that we survive. And now we have to pay attention to what it is that's threatening us and what it is that could save us. And usually when alarm is there, the first response we have is caution, to be careful, or to run away so that we can save ourselves. There are other emotions that are involved, and we're not going to talk as much about them tonight, but there's also frustration, which moves us to attack, and pursuit, which moves us to be together with the people that we love. But we're going to focus mainly on the alarm part of this, which is caution or flight, and the activation. And of course, what is it that alarms us the most? Well, it is facing separation, the experiencing or facing the lack or loss of closeness to those to whom we are attached. And it isn't just losing someone, it's the fear of losing someone. That is the key. And again, this is what we have been facing during this time is the fear of losing people that are close to us. But we can lose them in many ways because we attach as human beings in many ways. And attachment is like a series of roots. When attachments are deep, we grow and develop. And we need these levels of attachment to have this deep anchored roots. So as attachment goes down, we become more anchored. Now we attach, and this has to do with how we develop as babies, but it also has to do with us as human beings. And we all, again, have experienced not being able to be with, because one of the most simplest ways that we attach is being with, being close to, being in the presence of. The second way in which we attach is through sameness. So being like the people that we are with, wanting to imitate them and to speak the same language as they are. And the attachment through sameness is key and crucial for language development, because a baby can make all the sounds in the world, but as soon as they become attached to the people in their world, they start making the sounds of the people to whom they are attached. And it's one of the ways in which we pass on our language, our culture, and all the things that are important to us as a society. We attach through belonging and loyalty. Now we don't have to just be the same as, we can believe that someone will take care of us. I call this the trust level of attachment. And as teachers, this is a level that we need children to attach to us. They need to believe that even if sometimes we ask them to do something they don't like very much, that we're on their side and that we're going to take care of them. Then we have 3 other levels of attachment that unfortunately sort of a bit of a paradox, where these bring us and make us feel more vulnerable. But in order to attach deeply so that we can become a separate person, we have to believe that we're very important to people. And again, I think one of the things that happened when your children came back to school is you all showed them how important they were to you, how thrilled you were to see them, using their name, letting them know that you remembered that they liked certain things, even if you hadn't seen them for a while. And that makes children believe that and feel that you are going to take care of them. Of course, caring and love are important. And the last one, of course, is being attached in such a way that we are confident that you can be loved and cared for, even if you have weaknesses, even if you have things that are not good about yourself, that there are no secrets between you and the people to whom you're attached. And it's really, really important. And again, it's so important that we let our children know that it's okay to make mistakes, because attachment is able to overcome that as well. Now, what happens here is we go into attachment alarm, and it can come from the threat of many things, from not being able to be with, from not being the same as, from not belonging, for not feeling that people are loyal to us, for feeling that we don't matter, from feeling that we're not being loved, and from feeling that we're not being known, that we have to keep a secret. We have to keep who we really are secret from other people because we cannot be loved. And so it's important for us to understand that some children can be in an intact family that takes care of them physically, but still have attachment alarm if the people around them, even though they're with them and they're taking care of their physical needs, are not taking care of their emotional needs. So the experience of separation comes from not being cared for, not being wanted, not being liked by those to whom we are attached, by parents who are not present physically or emotionally. Sadly, our cell phones can cause separation from our children because they can't catch our attention when we're busy with the cell phone. When children are shuffled between parents, obviously when a child has been removed from home and has had to go into foster care, even an adopted child can feel separation because they miss the voice of their mother. The arrival of a sibling, oh my goodness, now having to share your parents with this cute little baby that everybody is fawning over. That can make you feel not wanted or not cared for. Even the act of going to sleep at night is an act of separation. And it's because we are actually, trusting that we're going to wake up the next morning and everyone will be there. Separation comes from being yelled at or displeasing somebody else. And then, of course, the realization that bad things can happen to those to whom we are attached. And of course, again, the pandemic has brought that to the fore for us. One of the things we need to understand as the state of us as human beings, our human condition, is one of separation alarm. It just is part of who we are, and we have to learn. One of the things we learn as we get older is how we can tolerate that alarm. And the more we can have people around us that care for us and reassure us that there will be someone to care for you, the more you can tolerate that. And as you get older, you're able to handle that yourself. But it's one of the things we cannot get rid of, because it is actually one of the things that keeps us safe, is we need to notice when things aren't going well. So we have to understand that there's a difference between emotion and feeling. Emotion is all of the stuff. So when we have alarm, and alarm will move us to caution, it's the adrenaline and the cortisol and the heart rate and the blood pressure and all of those things that are underneath the iceberg. They go on whether we pay attention to them or not, whether we notice them or not. When something threatens us, this is what's going to happen. We're wired in this way. When we're able to move it into consciousness, and the words that are related to alarm are the words, I'm scared. I know that many times people have said, oh, we're so worried about our children because they talk about being scared of getting sick. They talk about being scared that mommy or daddy or grandma are going to get sick. But when they're able to say, I'm scared you're going to get sick, they are actually talking about the emotion that's going inside of them. And though it's distressing to us, it is exactly what needs to happen. It is emotion and consciousness coming together and us being able to understand that. So it's got to rise up into consciousness. It's not comfortable, but when we acknowledge it, now we can do things with it. So when we talk about anxiety, What we're talking about now is a little bit of separation from our alarm. When we can't connect our alarm to the separation that we're facing, now it morphs into something that we call anxiety. Anxiety and alarm are not that far away from each other, but sometimes the anxiety can kind of go somewhere else. So we call this alarm without eyes, because very often we start to worry about things that are not really that worrisome, but the alarm, if we can't say, I'm scared, I'm going to get sick, I'm scared that you're going to get sick, then that worry goes into other things that are not, that are a little bit more to the side. So a child who says, I'm scared that mommy doesn't love me is feeling their alarm of the threat of possible separation. It breaks our heart when a child says that, but they are feeling their emotions. But we have some of our children who are constantly asking, did I do that right? Is this how I do it? Do you like it? Is this okay? These are our little perfectionist children. These are the ones. And actually what they're talking about is that they're afraid that if I don't get it right, you won't be able to love me. It's really hard to work with that until we can bring it to the next level, which is, and very often children finally are able to say, I'm so afraid that if I make a mistake, people won't be able to love me. Now we're moving into the alarm, and now of course we're moving into the tears, which are necessary for dealing with an alarming world. So one of the interesting things about our brain is that when we feel that alarm, we kind of have to have an explanation for it. And one of the ways that Dr. Neufeld says it, and I think it really, for any of you that have raised children and are raising young children, basically we are not alarmed because there are monsters under the bed. There are monsters under the bed because we're alarmed. And I'm absolutely certain for all of you that when your children went back to school, all of a sudden these monsters came back. Because school can be an alarming place. What if I don't know what my teacher wants me to do? What if I don't understand my teacher? What if it's not the teacher I was expecting? So especially the first month of school, there's lots of scary things happening at school. And this will transform at nighttime into lots of monsters under the bed, in the closet, up wherever. There's, and you all know that when you've gone around spraying, trying to get rid of the monsters, they appear somewhere else. It's just a sign of the child's brain basically saying, oh, there's lots of scary things going on in my life. And so they just create alarming creatures or exaggerate situations to justify that state of alarm. And it's perfectly normal. Nothing wrong with your kids if they do that. It's just reading it in a different way. So why can't we connect that alarm to the separation that we're facing? Well, because our brain will protect us from seeing that which would make us feel too vulnerable or too wounded. And the shell goes around. The shell goes around, a blockage happens, which basically allows us to live in a world that is way too wounding or makes us feel way too vulnerable. And so what happens here is that our brain protects us. It protects us from looking at the really scary things, which we really can't do when we're alone, which we really only can do when we're with somebody who's able to take care of us. And some of us don't have that, ability or that possibility at that particular moment in time. And so the feelings, the words I'm scared of, start to go away. And other behaviors come up, like fears and monsters and obsessions, even compulsions, like things that we have to do to make ourselves feel better, like trying to be perfect, like trying to erase all the time, or avoiding things, or running away and hiding, or just not wanting to be, because it's basically the alarm, the emotion has to come out somewhere, and it comes out in a behavior. And so what are some of the signs of elevated alarm? Well, it gets channeled. It gets channeled into being anxious about their work, or being anxious about not having like even enough friends, or whatever, or specific fears, or compulsions, the need to do certain things. I know that some of the teachers, again, less so right now, but last year they were talking about some of their children who just needed to wash their hands all the time, wash their hands, wash their hands, wash their hands, because that was the way in which the brain was basically saying, if you wash your hands, you'll be okay. It comes out in nightmares, and it comes out in restlessness, because remember, there's that cortisol, there's that adrenaline, it's pushing us around, and that looks like hyperactivity, right? Especially if the child can't talk about being scared. And so then, of course, what children want to do are certain things. They want to now start sucking or chewing their nails or biting or eating, and that's some of the alarm responses some of us as adults have. These are things that will soothe. It'll bring some sense of soothing to us. Rocking, pacing, music with a beat, swinging, even watching a flickering fire, watching waves, a worry bead, stroking, twirling the hair. Some children rub their genitals. This is not a sexual thing. All of these activities, bring our sympathetic nervous system, bring our parasympathetic nervous system into action. It calms us down. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. We all do them. We all have our own ways of doing them, and they are important. I know that often breathing will bring it down as well. And I know that, Lynn, you teach the children how to do their breaths, and that brings it down. So comfort through contact and transition objects, blankets, stuffed animals. These are all ways that we help ourselves to come into a state of calm. And then the physical exertion, the running, the jumping, the squirming. And of course, some of us turn to other things to bring that calm to us. And some of the medications that our children take actually do reduce the sense of alarm within the brain. And then that's what one of the things that Ritalin does. Now, what's interesting here is that when alarm becomes even more overwhelming, when it kind of goes over the top, then our brain protects us even more. And some of the children that we'll be talking about later on in the session, these are the children who have this overwhelming alarm and the protection. And now what happens is that the chemicals of alarm remain, but the feelings are completely numbed out. And so they basically, the alarm is there, the agitation is there, the activity is there, but there's no feelings of being scared. And so this double protection here really means that these children, they don't talk about being scared. Some of you will know what it is they're experiencing in their life. Some of you will know what's happening. Some of you will be able to, even think you want to talk to them and say, I know this is really scary for you. Your friend went to the hospital or your friend got sick, and they say, no, I'm not worried about that. Because this is the brain's protection against an alarm that is too much to bear. Now, what we tend to see with these kids are agitation, hyperactivity, difficulty remembering directions, because remember that hypothalamus or the hippocampus is now really trying to figure out how to keep this child safe. They have attention problems. They have difficulty staying on task. They want to run away. They want to hide. They want to resist what we're asking them to do. There's so much going on underneath, but it's not coming through into the feeling area. And so what happens is, first of all, their attention is focused on what alarms and trying to fix it. So they're maybe thinking back to what happened at home and what they can do and what can happen. Or they want to just avoid more vulnerability. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because it makes them feel more vulnerable. And so as a result, they get very easily distracted from whatever task it is that we want them to do, because one part of their brain is trying to solve a much bigger problem than the job that they have to do. They have a hard time finishing tasks because it gets too overwhelming. They can't stay in there. They will be reluctant or refuse to engage in any task that seems difficult. And one of the jobs that we have as educators is to get our children to do things that they don't think they can do, to get them to do things that are new for them, to get to do things that are a little bit hard for them. And most of our children can handle the little bit of alarm that comes with that. They can handle it. But for these kind of children, it gets too much and they just basically push those tasks away. And they're going to be paying attention to everything else into their environment. The slightest little sound, they're going to be looking. A door slams two classrooms down, they're going to notice that door slam. And so because their brain is constantly trying to evaluate what's going on in the environment, what's happening, and they can't tell us. Children that are in the first stage, the anxious stage, are going to say, "Why did that door slam?" But these kids can't even say that. But they'll be very fidgety, very squirmy. They're going to be looking for ways to distract themselves because it doesn't feel good. And they're going to get very tired and fatigued very easily. And that's often why they can't finish tasks or do work that we think would be relatively easy for them to do. And then other things can happen as well, because when they have more emotion and less feeling, then they will run away but not seem scared. And this is where the tricky part is with these kids, is that they don't look scared. They can be very silly and very sassy and you know, kind of have the smirk on their face, which is very hard for us as adults to handle because it feels like they're rejecting us, and that is worrisome to us. They can say rude things without seeming angry or disturbed. They'll refuse to listen to adults. They'll actually destroy their schoolwork, and they'll basically say, I don't care. And these kids are very hard for us who are caring people to handle and to respond to because they don't seem like they need us. Now, why is this happening? Well, of course, we know that as adults become more alarmed, children feel the alarm. And this is one of the things that we have to recognize, and is that we, all of us still, because COVID has not been resolved, we as adults are all in a much higher state of alarm than we've ever been before. We have worries about their academic capacities and what's going to happen. How are we going to teach them? How are we going to catch them up? That alarm is going up. And our children feel that. Our children feel when we are alarmed and worried. We know, of course, the other reasons for why some of our children do come to our school in this high state of alarm is because there's been family disruption, separation, and divorce. There's been domestic conflict due to increased frustration because of what can and can't be done under the circumstances. There have been disturbing community incidents, suicides, death, illness, people going missing. These are all things that affect the children. And then we have some of our parents and caregivers who, despite their best intentions, despite their absolute desire to be the best parents they can be, just can't do it right now because of their consumption or because of mental health issues, because of their own trauma that they have lived. Right. And so we know that that the children are sensing that and feeling that and responding to that. But again, not because people want to hurt them, but just because they can't do it. And then, of course, for some of the children, just the uncertain living conditions. So these are all things that many of your children are facing, and this is why some of your children, when they come to school, are a challenge to handle. And again, the important thing here is to remember that all this is coming from alarm. And then, of course, sometimes, unfortunately, when we try to manage challenging behavior, we do more things to alarm children. We use separation, we use timeout or isolation, we use consequences, especially for the immature, and that just doesn't work well. We're trying to get them to think about what they're doing, but when you are full of alarm, it's really hard to think. We try and use a reward system, but inadvertently, we're making attachment contingent on good behavior, which again increases the alarm. And so when you already have a highly alarmed child, they just become more defended. They become more hardened. But we have to also remember that the children who are good, who want to be good, look at these things that are happening and they start worrying, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to do something to get the people in my world to be upset with me? So what do we do? Let me just take a little moment here to. So what can we do? Now, first of all, we know we can't fix the world. We can't fix the circumstance that we're living in right now. And what breaks our hearts is we cannot fix the conditions that brought the families of these children to where they are. There's a lot of grieving that needs to be done, and I'm not going to talk about tears a lot today. But there still is a lot of grieving that we as adults need to do when we know and understand where these children are coming from. But there are things that we actually can do. And these are the things that we need to continually remind ourselves of, talk with each other about, develop habits, develop ways of being with children, develop certain tones of voice, certain things that we do, that we can therefore, through our interaction with the children, work with that. So I know for myself, as you can tell, I talk very fast, I talk a lot. But when I know that there are certain circumstances when I'm dealing with someone who's highly anxious, there are times when I know I have to be different in order to help that person. The first thing, the most important thing, is accept anxiety and alarm. It is part of the human condition. It is going to manifest itself. And as I say, when we've got children who are able to talk about the fact that they're scared, that actually is a good thing. Then we need to provide a sense of rest and safety. We are the ones they are turning to, and they're going to say, is it okay? And so we need to do that. We need to let them know and reassure them that things are going to be okay, even though we don't know exactly how it's going to be okay, but it will work out. Then we need to provide outlets to help them reduce the effects of alarm. We, of course, want to use the power of play and then help the tears to flow in the face of alarming futilities. Again, a child who is able to cry and deeply grieve the alarm that they can't get away from is a child who's then going to be able to bounce back and work through and handle and have actually the courage to deal with an overwhelming world. So these are the general kind of principles of things that we need to be doing. So we shouldn't be battling the symptoms or the irrationality. If the child says there's a monster under the bed, yep, it's really scary. You know, we have to just accept the fact that there are monsters there. You know, if they're washing their hands, yes, I know it just feels so much safer when you're washing your hands. Don't get them to stop washing their hands. Just talk about how much safer it makes them feel when they do it. So instead of trying to stop the behavior and reasoning with it, we just need to come alongside and acknowledge, I'm here. You're getting worried. It feels safer when you wash your hands. We need to actually provide comfort, not much advice. Next words I'm going to share with you actually comes from a teenager, from a very, very caring mother that kept trying to help her daughter who was in high alarm. And she basically said to her, Mom, all your motivational chatting is just really stressing me out. This little girl didn't need anybody explaining to her why she shouldn't be doing what she was doing. She just needed someone to come alongside her and say, yep, it's pretty scary right now. That's what she wanted, and she was able to tell her mom that. We need to provide a sense of rest and safety because what do they need? They need to know that we will take care of them and get through this difficult time, that information doesn't make children feel secure, that relationships do. Safety is about human attachment, and this is what we can provide. We want to put the emphasis on togetherness and relationship. We want to bridge separations. You know, if they had a bad day yesterday, welcome them warmly today. Be the one to restore the relationship. I'm sorry things didn't go well yesterday. We want to assure the children that adults will continue to be there to care for them when they are at school. And we're going to find a way through. And Sarah, I'm going to ask you just right now to share a little bit about this picture because I think you had an interesting experience with this little girl.
Thank you, Heva. Yeah, I'd just like to share quickly that one day at Opawa this year, we don't have a lot of dancer coming out because of the COVID. So I was the only one fancy shawl dancer, grown up, old fancy shawl, but we had a lot of new and beginners fancy shawls. Young girl was dancing for the first time. Even some were holding up regalia with pins still, and Kukum were doing regalia in the middle of the night. So first time for them in the dancing arena, dancing circle. One of them had happened to find out that, well, she was related to me, and then happened to find out that her dad, passed away the year before. So she's experiencing a lot of separation. And so for that day, I can tell you that I was the answer for that day. I put her under my shawl, and I explained her the protocol, and I just let her know where she need to be, and then give them candy. I like to give them candy during powwows, and then all year the kids kind of find out that I was a person to look to. So I don't know if you can tell me. Well, it was kind of for them, maybe they attached by sameness with me.
Oh, yes.
And belonging also, because powwow is so it's very something that pass on the identity. So I told them, were you part of this dancer family and then fancy shawl dancers family? Yeah. So I felt the responsibility of being there for them. And then I took that role too. And then I realized I have to let them know how proud I was of them, and teaching them new moves, and also make them remember to practice for next year. So I'll be there next year to keep dancing with them. And I'll try to go in school and keep dancing with them. So for me, I think for the day, I couldn't solve their stress or problem of the young girl, but I probably give her this power of forgive all the problem and the stress and live it all out on the dancing circle for that day. It's how I felt when I dance. All my problem, you don't think about what you're stressed out, you just take your courage and then you go all out. So and at a point when it was her time for the young girl to go on her category, she couldn't go. She wanna hide and stuff. So I went, take her hand, and then we done a couple of rounds together. And when I felt her ready, but I let her go. And all the other kids came and joined. So that was a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, because that's exactly it. You were her anchor for that day. You attached to her through a number of different levels, and you also provided a wonderful bridge to next year. She now has something to look forward to, and even in her deep moments, her difficult moments, she will remember those words that you said. Oh, I want to be there to see Sarah next year. Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly what we're talking about. This is how children will grow and develop. They will grow and develop through these kinds of relationships. So what we want to do is that, that alarm is there, that desire to do things, that desire to move is there. So let's find some outlets for helping reduce anxiety. Simple things that we can have in our classroom are fidget items. I know some classrooms in which each child has a little basket, and there's, you just can go to the dollar store and get a couple of these little things that they're allowed to, pull and whatever and fiddle with. In the olden days, we wouldn't let our children fiddle with things, but now we know that in order to do that, and again, our occupational therapists tell us as well, I know some of them will go flying around the classroom. I understand that. But again, we can't take things away from children just because one or two can't do it. These are very helpful and healthy for some children to do. So they just need something to do with their hands when that alarm goes up. Weighted items as well. This little doggy goes around the shoulder and it it just helps the body feel well. These ones can go on the lap. Again, many of the children will start using them. Maybe you can find some funds. These are quite expensive little items, but maybe you can find some funds, specifically maybe Jordan's Principle, so that you can buy some of these things for your classrooms and for the children who really need it. Some children do need to move, and some classrooms have set up kind of a movement area. They have a little poster, and on that poster are things that the child can do when they need to move their body around. The beauty of it is they're still in the classroom, they're still listening to what's going on, but they're able to respond to that need to move in their bodies. So we call that a movement station. And then, of course, our calm corners that we can create in our classrooms. The one on the bottom there is just underneath a little table that's built into the classroom. I love this one because it's a basket. This doesn't cost a lot of money. It's just a basket that little children can crawl into and feel safe. A little corner with just a couple of cushions. These are not things that are expensive to do, but it's amazing for some children that just being able to go a little bit away from the noise of the classroom, just to find a little spot where they can just feel a little bit more private. It just helps them deal with the alarm that they're feeling. Obviously, playing to get emotions out, absolutely. And this is why, again, with our 4, 5, 6-year-olds, our 7-year-olds, we need to allow them to do play, because play, is a release valve. It allows this alarm to move through. You can play with alarm, you can play with monsters, being the monster, reading scary stories, pretending to be scared, playing disaster, playing hospitalized and being sick. These are all ways in which children give a vision, a place, a space for that alarm to come out in play, which is not for real. But they need to be able to play those things. They're not being morbid when they're playing dying. They're just going through that process, figuring it out. The same with separation. It allows them through play to process their internal world. So playing dead, playing the orphan, hide and seek games, fairy tales where children are lost. We're all fascinated by the orphan, because this is all our biggest worry, is being left. So it's through play, as my colleague Hannah Beach says, it's through play that children get to imagine how they will survive in the face of adversity. And when we have challenging times, as we do now, our children need more play, not less play, for their emotional well-being. Now we have some of our children that are not focused. They can't pay attention. They're distracted. Well, first of all, we need to see the alarm. It comes from alarm for the most part. And what we need to do to compensate for that is actually create a strong relationship to attract attention. we pay attention to things that are important to us, and here is, I love this picture because that little girl, is really focusing on her teacher or on her elder. I don't know what the role of this person is, but clearly there's a strong attachment. And so that strong attachment makes us want to pay attention. So the stronger children's attachment is to us in the classroom, the more they will want to pay attention to us. Maybe not for very long, but they will. So when we want them to pay attention to us, to listen to us, we need to activate those attachment instincts so that they're willing to look up to us and follow us. We call this collect before you direct. And the trick is to get into their space, to get the eyes, a smile, and a nod. And so this is the big challenge, because with these unfocused children, unfortunately, we sometimes have to call their name 3 or 4 times. Billy, Billy, Billy. The trouble is, by the time the child looks up, the face that they're seeing is not an attachment face. And I always say to people, one of the things you have to do when you come to Eva's teacher education school is you got to take drama lessons. So that the 3rd time you say Billy, when he finally looks up, you remember that you have to look like you're happy that he's finally looking up. Because that's how do I get the child to look at me and smile? Because when they look at me and I'm smiling at them and they're smiling at me, now they're much more willing to follow my directions. So sometimes you need to sing a song or say a chant. Oh, and again, I'm not, to be very careful. We're not trying to shame Billy, but we can do something like, oh, my Billy, my little Billy, my little Billy, just something so that when he looks at you, you're smiling, you're looking pleasant. Because basically, the thing is, when the child is smiling, now they have given us permission to exist in their presence. And when they are looking at us, like this little girl is looking at her teacher, she will do anything for you. She really will. But we have to remember, first, we have to look like they want to smile at us. So it's really important for us to remember this. This is one of the things we have to train ourselves to do. Now, one of the times when children become very unfocused is when they're doing seat work. Our Quebec program has a lot more play in it than it does seat work, but once in a while you need them to do something on paper or with their hands or an activity. So first of all, remember, especially with our 4-year-olds and even our 5-year-olds, keep all seat work activities as short as possible. They don't need to concentrate right now. And actually, when they go out and play, they will be concentrating. Remember, when we have seat work, that's our agenda. That's not their agenda. When the focus wanders, well, let's just go back. We do the circulating and we go back to them and we just give a small step at a time. If we've got 2 or 3 things on a piece of paper, one of the things that I found really helpful, just fold the paper in half. Just let them just say, I just want you to do this one, right? And then if they do that one, or if their focus wanders again, let them go and play. Now, the other kids will say, well, Miss, how come he gets to go and play? You know what? He's finished his work. Now, he didn't finish the work, he finished his work. And people are going to say, well, aren't these children going to learn that they don't need to do work? But, most children want to do stuff for us. But when that alarm goes up, I don't know about the rest of you, but when my alarm goes up, I'm like up and down the stairs in my house. I'm doing I cannot concentrate. So when a child truly can't concentrate, but when the alarm goes down, we've had some children in some of our programs that actually come back to the teacher and say, I really want to do my work right now, miss. Because when their alarm comes down, their desire to do work is there. And we need to read the group and cut the activity short and give more permission for free time. We have to remember an assignment, a task, a job is our agenda. It's not necessary for development. We'll get there eventually. If you don't do it in September, you'll do it in October. You'll do it some point. You'll get it done. There isn't any lockstep way that children learn, especially not at 4 to 5 years old. Even at year 1, it's the same thing. If the focus, year 1, year 2, redirect, take a small step, ask them to do only 1 or 2 of them. And then if they just can't do it, allow them to go and do something quiet, a brain break. We'll talk about that in a moment. And again, read the group. Because remember right now, one of the things all classroom teachers are fighting is a heightened sense of alarm in all of the children, including yourself. And so we just need to remember. Listening to stories is another time when children can become terribly unfocused, when they stop listening and they start squirming and rolling around on the floor. One of the things that I have learned, and I learned it the hard way by by watching somebody whom I love, I absolutely deeply love, and who is one of the most wonderful men in the world. And Valerie, you know who I'm talking about, my husband, who also happens to be Santa Claus. And last year he had to Zoom Santa Claus, and I was Mrs. Claus, so I was helping him. And I watched a scenario with a little 4-year-old that broke my heart, because my husband wanted to read this little boy a story over Zoom, but the little boy lost attention and he couldn't listen. But my husband didn't notice because he wasn't used to doing Zoom. Because one of the things we need to remember is stories that, first of all, not all children are fascinated by what the author wrote. And the writer didn't know your children, didn't know what kind of words to use, just use the best words that he or she could. And it's not the text that's essential. It's not, they care more about about what's in the book. They care about the story. And we have to ask ourselves, why did I choose this book? Why is this worthwhile to share with my children? And think about a book as a sharing activity. So tell the story that goes with the illustrations rather than reading the story. That's what I wished my husband had done. I just wished he had stopped trying to read the story and just picked a few pictures and said, oh, look at the beautiful moose here and look at the snow and whatever, and just talked about it. Make the story interesting, because when you tell a story, you know, and again, you have a culture of storytelling in your communities. Watch a good storyteller. They read the crowd. They can make their voice go louder and softer to pull people in. And that's what we need to do. Get the children involved in the story. So the child who's losing focus on a book that you're trying to read them is actually giving you a message. It's time to tell the story now, not read the story. Now we have our agitated children. We have our children who are our little whirling fellows, are ones who come in and they basically just have a really hard time. So here are some things, again, suggestions that I have for you around those children. They're not easy to manage on your own. You're going to need as much help as you can. If you have people like Lynn and other of the centers that you have in your school, you're going to need all of their help. But first, just see the alarm. Remember, they don't look alarmed. But the agitation comes from alarm that is defended against. And these are the children that are hardest for us because they look like they don't need us, but they actually do. They need more attachment, not less attachment. So what do they need from us? Again, unconditional attachment. They shouldn't have to work for a relationship with the adults that are there, because when they're working for attachment, they're not able to rest and grow. And these children are really not in any kind of a state of rest, and their growth and development does get affected, as we've heard in other sessions. So what we want to do is we want to provide more attachment, more kindness and caring when the behavior is at the worst. Some people will tell you, why are you reinforcing their bad behaviors by being kind to them? But when we understand the much bigger picture and the much bigger dynamic, we will be like this grandfather here, whose little grandson did not want to talk to him. Did not want to talk to him. He was not rude verbally, but he was very clear non-verbally. I don't want to be with you. And the grandfather knew, I need to bring him, I need to be kinder to him so that he knows that I am there. And eventually, as some of you have seen, the third picture is the little grandson sleeping on the grandfather's, in the grandfather's arms. So we need to provide an environment that is necessary for their level of functioning. Let these kids pace or squirm. Give them fidget items, give them lots of elbow room. You know, these are, like, make a big circle for this kid if you're sitting on the carpet, because being too close is too hard for them. Give them movement breaks, send them to the movement station, send them to the activity corner, give them active jobs. Oh, I forgot the plants need to be watered. You know, let them do that, and then use brain breaks, because the whole class will benefit. Again, this is one of the things that if you're, especially in the year 1, year 2, when you're trying to do seat work, remember, again, when alarm is high, you need lots and lots of breaks, and of course, go outdoors. In terms of the classroom brain breaks, I know that Valerie and Sarah and I are going to work a little bit on pulling information together for you, but most of you guys know this. Do some kind of movement. And the research on this, there's a whole bunch of research now on brain breaks, basically says that when you do really active things in the classroom, the brain is able to function at higher levels, stress and anxiety are reduced. These things improve staying on task. They improve attentiveness, they restore energy and motivation. Sometimes all you need the kids to do is to pay attention for 5 minutes. If you give them a little bit of an activity, they actually will have that 5 minutes to do it. Other things, vary it by having popsicles. Which one are we going to do? By having some kind of a fitness bingo, just little things that kids can do. And then, of course, other kinds of things like a dance party, paper snowballs, clapping games, pool noodle drumming, Simon Says, stomp dancing, pretending various emotions, pretending to be sad, pretending to be frustrated, pretending to be angry, pretending to be happy. All of these things, pretending to be animals, playing monster games. All of these things are ways in which we can get the alarm to come out and also the emotions to come out. There are lots of things online. If you don't feel you're very creative, you can find some things through your smartboard. Sometimes it needs to be a quiet break, puzzle, or just drawing or coloring or whatever. What's very important here is the other side of it. Rest is important for brain development. Two big researchers, Dr. Vlack and Dr. Imordino Yang, have studied that rest is important because the brain is processing information when it looks like it's doing nothing, like just being silly, just coloring, just doing nothing. It's really important. And of course, ultimately, outdoor play. And I just ran across a whole bunch more research about all of the benefits of outdoor play in terms of learning about science. But for these very, very agitated children, when we take them outside, their agitation doesn't cause as much trouble. And Sarah, you have a wonderful story about a little boy that you had an experience with.
Yes, a little boy, 6 years old, 20 minutes of the first kindergarten, going outside in the in the bush. He was eating the trees with his sticks, and it was like really bugging me. I kind of hope the teacher removed the stick from his hand, but they let him do what he needs to do. It took 20 minutes eating the trees and just let all the emotion out. And after, he was creative. He find out a way to store all the bucket of his friend, and then he was just, he need that time to let it all out. And in the classroom, it could have been very disturbing for himself, keeping all inside, all his emotions. So outdoor, I observed that it's a way of healing. It's kind of motherhood's taking care of them, and then they find their way by themselves to release this emotion. So many benefits.
So many benefits of outdoor play in terms of developing the brain, in terms of emotional well-being, all of the things that our little children need. That's where they need to be. They need to be outdoors. And I'm sorry about bringing in the snow. I'm sure none of us want to think about snow, but I just love these kids clambering on the snow mountain outdoors every time of the year. Other ways in which we can help to decrease alarm is help them to believe that you will support them despite their shortcomings. We will bridge the separations. We need to really reconsider the use of any kind of behavior chart or behavior management situation, and also reconsider the use of a behavior report at the end of the day. Unfortunately, we need to recognize that when some of the things that we do actually only manage behavior on the surface, but actually cause more alarm. Now, we know there are some children, if they are in, they really pushed us to our limits. And this is why we need a team of people, places where these children can go. So obviously, sometimes they need to be away from you. Don't consider that a separation if it's done in a kind way. I know people have said, oh no, they've got to stay in the classroom with their teacher. No, they can't always do that. But use time away instead of time out. So send them to a safe place. If they can handle the calm corner, great. If not, send them to somebody. Sometimes you have to ask them to bring a book or an envelope, or sometimes they can go to a class with older children or to another adult, or your nurturing, I call it nurturing support center, but your peace room with Lynn. Like, find some way of just been in a dignified way that doesn't shame them, to get them to somebody else who's got a bit more time and space to help them. But what's really important here is that we always go to the student and welcome them back and let them know, I'm going to take care of you. I'll take care of you tomorrow. I'm going to be here for you. But don't feel shy about needing some space, because some of these children are absolutely exhausting as well. The behavior charts, if you've been using one, for the first month, I don't have a huge difficulty with it because it's a very quick way of letting a child know this is okay, this doesn't work in my classroom, this is what I mean by this. You know, so in that first month, children, you can very quickly teach the children how you want them to be. But one of the things you need to remember is that after the first 2 weeks, actually, you know exactly which kids are going to be in the green and which ones are going to be going down into the other colors. And so for those kids, you know, if they could change their behavior, they would. They're immature, they've got emotional problems. That's what's fueling their misbehavior. It's not because they don't know what they're supposed to do. It can cause shame and alarm and cause all sorts of other problems. What we really need to be doing is actually taking the time to say, what else can I do to help this child? The other one is the agenda at the end of the day. You know, we want to let our parents know what kind of a day the child had. But for many children, if they have to bring home that even that yellow face or that yellow feather or that little cloud over the sun, they're worried about seeing the disappointment in their parent's face. And the parent doesn't want to open up the agenda because, again, after the first month of school, it's just about always the same few children that are bringing these home. Now the parent wants to fix the behavior overnight. They get tense. Everybody gets tense. Everybody's frustrated. The child doesn't have a good evening, and it just doesn't work very well. And the other thing we need to remember is some of our good children can become very alarmed. One little girl said to her mom, "But mommy, what if this is the week I don't get green faces all the time?" So we have to be very sensitive. These kinds of things make children feel unsafe around adults. They don't actually do what we think they're going to do. And so the alarm increases and they start not quite caring. And again, Sarah, you have another story around a system like this.
Yes, this little boy, a friend of mine, he was so excited 3 days before school, first day of kindergarten, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I can wait, I barely dream." And then I met him 2 weeks after, and then I was cool and your first day, and I don't like school anymore. And I asked him how come, and I received a yellow feather. And why a little feather? And said, I've been make my teacher repeat too many times. So I was absolutely devastated to hear that story. And then I was like, well, maybe it's going to be better. But I was mad that we can make a little one, you know, feel shame about. And then at 4 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old, you're supposed to make your teacher repeat. So I think we have to change those way we treat children.
I know. I mean, and really, I have to be honest that I used to encourage teachers to do that too. So, but it took me, you know, finally I realized it just isn't that helpful, and there's got to be another way to communicate with the parents. So when we have these agitated children, especially, but our alarmed children, is we need to manage the situation to minimize the damage that these kinds of behaviors do. We can't expect any one intervention to correct or fix a child. We can't fix the alarm. We need to work with the alarm. We need to protect those relationships with the children. They need more playtime, not less playtime. And the only cure for a child who's full of alarm is time, lots of time, attachment, and patience. And again, you need to use your school team to help you manage and work with children like that. Ultimately, again, dancing, singing, playing music are the best ways to calm an overactive alarm system. The alarm system of the children and our alarm system as well. You know, we need to have lots of dancing and singing and playing still until, you know, our world settles down. And we also need to remember that our preschoolers don't think about their feelings. They embody their feelings. They have one thought or one feeling at a time. And the result is it's easy for them to do the wrong thing. They need to be constantly reassured that we will take care of them. It's not always easy to do, but I know that you have a wonderful team of people at your school that can work together to take care of even the most agitated child. And there we go.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing some of your examples, really good and strong moment with some children. And I would ask Lynn if she has something to tell us today.
Okay, so I just want to say that once again, Eva, you outdid yourself. Just giving us, like, those that have been in the workshop for a while, some review around alarm and, the limbic system and all of that. And, some really practical choices. But I just wanted to make comment on send the agenda home or the chart in that. And we used to have, I think, I don't think we're doing it anymore, but we used to have like these behavioral books, and kids, lose them somewhere. They get lost, or if the letter has to go home, the letter gets lost. So it's, again, it's like, what you said, they can't control, their behavior. Well, I mean, they can to a certain extent, but if they could do better, they would. And it's a challenge for them. And then, yeah, to bring this paper home, sometimes it's to a home that caused a lot of the alarm because of what's going on in there. And they know that once they see it, it's going to be more alarm. I had a session with a little boy the other day, and there was just something that minor, but in his eyes, it was like, I have to tell my mom that I had a meltdown at school. So, and I just says, well, you got upset, a little upset about something, but but in his eyes, it was a meltdown. And it was upper elementary, grade 5, but he's someone who's come a long way with behavior. And
Yeah.
so now he's in a place where he can, I guess, self-reflect. But he still feels then, okay, his mom needs to know, and I guess maybe if he's being honest with her, then the attachment's there.
Yes, that's that vulnerability of attachment, but it's
Yeah.
still hard. I mean,
I
I don't
just
know about
want,
the rest of you, but when I get a speeding ticket or a parking ticket, I hate telling my husband.
Mhm.
And he's not going to stop loving me because I got a parking ticket. But I
Yeah.
don't want to see the disappointment in his eyes. He's
Mhm.
gotten very good over the years. Now he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry you got that. You didn't deserve that."
Mhm.
That's why we're still married.
Yeah.
But the disappointment in the eyes, and that's what those agendas do. They, one mother said, my son, if he's got a yellow face, he won't even give me his agenda. And she said, I'm not going to be unhappy with him, and it's not going to be a consequence at home, but he doesn't want to see the disappointment. So again, it took me a long time to figure out the problem with that, because it's a good idea, but it isn't good psychologically for the children. So I'm becoming more passionate about encouraging people to find other ways of communicating with the parents, to not make the child be the bearer of bad news, and to reassure the child and reassure the family, we're going to work on this together. Because many families think that they have to fix their kids overnight, and that's tough for them. If they could have fixed their kid overnight, they would have done it by now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking at some of the, practical solutions when someone's in the alarm stage, I think it's the first time you talk about the double block. Is that what you call it, of the brain? I don't think I've
Yeah.
seen that in your other workshops.
No.
So there's been the block, and then there's the double block, and I think we see a lot of double blocked.
Yeah.
And it's very it's heartbreaking to see that, when the student, can't even connect to a feeling, or I don't care, or forget how you said it, where they seem like they don't care.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter. And I was like, wow, I find that when I see a student like that, it's like they've hardened their heart.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because it's interesting, the terminology that we use, harden the heart, which is basically stop the heart from feeling, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's not a good state to be in.
Yeah. So usually when a child, I see them with that, the first thing I want to do is put my hand on their heart.
Yeah.
And then they can put their hand on my heart. And let's connect. Let's feel that beat, that heartbeat again.
Yeah.
Trying to warm that heart back up.
Yeah. And you see, and again, you're using the senses, because the senses it's very non-threatening, non-vulnerable to use the senses, because it's not a judgment. It's just a fact. You have a heartbeat. I have a heartbeat. Wow, that's very
And,
powerful.
with some of them, I know, when I need to go, it's not just the physical thing anymore, or, the emotional or the words. It's about connecting spirit with spirit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to go that deep.
Yeah.
And so with me, I did a workshop quite a few years ago now with uh, yoga and how I work the yoga. And I put some calm down strategies, and I called it my peaceful place,
Mhm. Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
peaceful place is within yourself.
Yeah.
So it's using the senses
Yeah.
in a non-threatening way, to go within and connect to that peaceful place that's always all knowing. It's wise, it's
Yeah.
you, and it's connecting with that heartbeat and that spirit and that breath, and
But
it's like making a shift within yourself.
yeah.
You really have to know, like, just talking about it already, I could feel the shift within myself. It's like it increases your vibration.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really have to have that control within yourself, especially when someone is spitting, biting, kicking, trying to pull your
Yeah.
hair,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it's about teaching them some of these strategies before you need it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that takes a while, doesn't it, for some of the
Yeah.
children, because they've had to protect themselves so much against feeling, because they felt so vulnerable. So it must feel so gratifying when, as the years you've worked with them, when you start to see that happening, even for the ones that are,
Yeah.
but for our little ones, it's going to be much harder,
Yeah.
because they don't have the capacity yet either, right?
Yeah, like the other day I had to work with one little one. I would say he's probably around 6, grade 1. And there was a little push and shove in the line to come in. So the teacher just wanted me to speak. And when I started asking him, like, what happened in line? You know what his response was? Um, I had to go. My mother had to go to court, and I'm in foster care now. But now we're going to court again, and I'm going to be. So before he could even talk about what happened in line with the little push and shove that he had, he felt like he had to tell me his
But
life
don't you
situation.
think that the push and the shove was about
Oh
that
yeah,
untold story, right?
sure. But he managed to put words to it.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
And he says, now we went back to court, and now I'm going to be with my mommy again.
Oh,
And then I
yeah,
said, okay, I'm happy for you. So
yeah.
let's just, so yeah, so it's just, it's been a interesting week. So, and then there's the senses, the scented pillows,
Yeah.
just the beanie animals on the belly, and telling them to give the animal a ride. So when you inhale, they're lying on their back, the little animal comes up.
Oh,
When you exhale, the animal goes down. And just for them to do that, again, when you mentioned it a while ago about breath,
yeah.
breath work is key to switch from the
Sympathetic to the parasympathetic. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. From the activation to the rest.
yes.
Yeah. Because only then can you do the deeper work, right?
Mhm.
Because when you're in that alarm mode, you can't think, you can't process, you can't. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow.
how lavender hand lotion,
Yeah.
on the hand, and teaching them just to smell and,
Yep.
cup their face. And even just that,
Yeah.
it adds something.
Oh,
I have something, I call it magic mist.
oh yeah.
Magic mist. And it's just essential oils and water.
Mhm.
When you
Yeah.
have this magic mist, it just helps you to calm. And then you change your voice, eh?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
helps you to calm down. And the
Yeah.
magic mist is going to, help you to release whatever. So it's like that. Of course, water, but it's
Yeah.
hard, with the COVID now. But I have a water fountain, and just with
Oh,
them listening
just
to
that
the
little
water
water. Yeah.
gurgling,
Yeah.
relaxes the nervous system.
Yeah.
Soothing music,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if it's just, the traditional flute music, feathers.
Mhm.
Once they reach that point where they can calm down with the beanie, then I get a feather and I brush them down.
Oh,
So just that light feather on their arms or on their hair or on their face, you could just feel them melt on the floor. Blankets, making a swaddle with them. Call it enchilada.
Oh, cute.
So we're making an enchilada. We're going to put your enchilada, and then you just kind of make a little bundle with them.
These are always that the brain now registers somebody's taking care of me. Someone's going to be there for me. It's going to be okay, right? And then the wisdom and the the emotions can move through, and some of them, of course, the sadness needs to come out, because for many of them what they're living is very, very sad. But if they can grieve what they can't change, then they can start to find other ways through, right? Other ways of being able to come to you and say, I need help, like those are all the things that we want them to do.
And then guided visualization, that kind of thing, to just create happy places, or where so there's all kinds of things. Well, of course, there's the yoga poses. Just putting these students' legs up on the wall.
Really, eh?
They're lying on their back. You put their legs up on the floor. That also grounds them back.
That's why a movement station in a classroom, you can have couple, maybe, and this is something you could help some of the classes with, then, is to find one or two of the yoga poses that are easy for the children to do, that are the most powerful for helping the alarm to go down, and then
child pose is number one.
Exactly.
We call it child pose because that's how babies sleep.
So, and we put little pictures at the movement station so that the children can go and find it and easily reproduce it.
Well, just those legs up on the wall, it helps to restore and calm them down. Just the chimes and the bells, lightly. And then when you don't hear it anymore, raise your hand, and it allows them to bring back that focus.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you have lots of good ideas. I'm just wondering if some people have questions, if any of the people that have
I wanted to just share some of that.
Yeah, I know, it's lovely.
No, thank you so much, Lynn. It's quite inspiring, and I think we're learning so much from from what you're doing in your classroom, and I think other will benefit from it also. And you're quite a resources also that people will maybe can ask to you in your school. So thank you so much for that sharing.
Okay.
Does anyone have question or something to ask?
I have a question.
Good.
You can open your camera also, Cheryl, if you want to. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
How are you?
Good.
I just wanted to know, what are the studies, or if there's any, on, childhood anxiety and how it affects you in your future. They say once you get asthma or bronchitis, then it's going to come back in the later years. So what is the latest?
Well, again, I think it's hard to separate out the experiences that bring alarm and therefore cause anxiety from what's going to happen to you long term. Again, it's not quite a medical situation, but we also know that with some illnesses as well, is that if we're able to deal with them well, then we don't have as many effects. But the reality is, and that's why it's very important for us to think about our practices in education and say, are we making things worse? And I mean, for me, the two big ones that I realized, oh my goodness, we are making things worse for our children when we think we're making it better, are things like behavior charts in the classroom, reward systems, which I didn't even talk about, and the agenda at the end of the day. The alarm, alarm is part of us as human beings. We are all going to feel alarm. A lot of times we call it being anxious, but it's actually plain alarm. But you're right, if you have experienced lots and lots and lots of alarm as a young child, you're going to experience more alarm as you get older as well. So there is a correlation to it. So what our job in education, since we're not therapists, our job is to say, well, in the constraints that we have in our kindergartens, and that's why, again, play. The more children can play, the more they're going to be able to handle the overload of alarm in their system. when we start making children sit at tables and follow directions and do what they're supposed to do and get upset with them when they won't and pressure them to do more and tell children, no, you can't play until you finished your work. If we start doing that in 4 and 5 year olds, we're going to be causing alarm to go way up when they're adults. So that's why we have to be so careful with our young children. And I'm even going to grade 1. I really think that we have to be so careful not to be over demanding of our little 6-year-olds, especially in this day and age. So yes, there is a link between too much alarm when you're young to having it when you're older. And so, we have to look at, and all the studies around play, all of the studies around play say that if children play a lot when they're young, they're more hardy when they're older. But not only are they more hardy emotionally, it's actually their brains are better. So we do have to be very, very careful not to stress our little ones out too much. And that's one of the reasons why when Valerie and I talked way back when, and we talked, luckily we found money from 4 to 8 years old. I said, well, there are some messages that we need to keep getting out there, because you're right. If we don't create a safe, calming environment, it will be harder for an adult to cope with an alarming environment.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, the parenting skills, that were yesterday are not the same today. And there's a lot of adaptation for parents, not just as a different generation, but COVID being what it is.
Oh yeah, a lot of frustration. It's, hard for people to have those kids underfoot all the time. Yes, yeah, exactly. But this, so again, and some of it though, again, we can't change what's going on in the families, but how we talk about their child can make a huge difference. I mean, as a school psychologist, one of the jobs I always had was I was always at the difficult meetings, right? You didn't call the school psychologist in if there wasn't a difficult meeting to have. And when I started to use this language, and there was, and just things like, first of all, we would say, if not myself, the principal would say, look at all the people that want to take care of your child. All of a sudden the parent realized, oh, they're not against me. Yes, we're all a team together. We're all trying to take care of your child. And then somebody would say, oh, well, yes, and then he did this and then he did that. And then I would reframe it and saying, oh, he just had so much frustration in him, or he was so alarmed. And I remember one time a parent was telling me that her little boy, was school phobic. He wouldn't come to school and he was doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden, her mother got sick and they were going to the hospital. And so I said to her, but of course, it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal. You were running around, you were worried about your mother. Of course his alarm's going to go up. That's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with him. He isn't regressing, but he is responding to, oh, she said, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, that's okay. We'll get him. We'll do this tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll go back to the early plans that we had to get him back into school. And when we talk to parents like that and say, oh, your child must have been really scared. Oh, that must have been alarming. Oh, that must have been frightening. Oh, it's perfectly normal for him to say it's scared. Oh, it's perfectly normal for him to be crying. They get reassured. And that most parents know in their heart. But everybody's been telling them, oh, we shouldn't be crying, shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. So we need to reframe how we speak to the parents. And then reassure them that, every day your child needs you and we're going to help your child.
Almost like the circle of security.
Yes. Oh, the circle of security is beautiful. I love it. That program is so in line with the kinds of things that I've been talking to the teachers about. It's the perfect program that meshes in, because it truly understands. I mean, and I love the visuals as well, the hands that hold, right? And you hold your child and you let them go, but you're there when they come back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful program for parents. Yeah.
Well, thanks for answering my question.
You're welcome.
So I guess it's the end.
Okay, so I have to sign off right away. I have to be somewhere in about
Yeah, for
5
sure.
minutes.
Go ahead.
Bye, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn.
Okay, so it
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure, and Valerie will be in touch.
Perfect.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, see you later, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cheryl. Bye-bye.